The Gralvuk was everything the Concorde feared. 12 feet long, 6 feet tall at the shoulder, with 4 forelimbs ending in clawed digits, and a mouth that split vertically rather than horizontally, like some nightmarish trap from a prehistoric ocean. Its skin was dark and ridged like volcanic stone, eyes the color of molten copper, always fixed, always calculating. The Biodome Habitat Lab on Station Theta 9 called it Specimen 9. Most referred to it in hushed tones. Students called it the Beast. The instructors used it as a cautionary tale. "Observe," said Instructor Vekthal, gesturing to the energy field enclosure. His voice echoed through the tiered amphitheater of xenobiology students. "This is the Gralvuk, one of the most advanced terrestrial predators of the outer reaches. Its bite pressure exceeds 4 tons. It has redundant circulatory systems, a paralytic spit gland, and enough intelligence to stalk prey for days." The class watched as the creature paced behind its transparent wall, tail swaying, nostrils twitching. No sentient species has ever formed a bond with a Gralvuk. No prison has ever held one indefinitely. It does not respond to training, bribery, or threat. It simply waits. Was a dramatic breath. And that, class, is why no one can tame this predator. Someone snorted quietly in the back. Instructor Vekthal turned sharply. Was something amusing, human? The snort turned into a cough. A young woman stood near the upper steps, arms crossed, a half-eaten pouch of blue cap berries in her pocket. Her badge read, "Dr. Kira Mason, Xenopsychology Fellow, Earth Science Exchange." A shrug. "I mean, back home we've got apex predators too. Lions, bears, crocodiles. We tamed wolves. Now we have poodles. You're telling me no one's even tried to socialize this one?" Vekthal's frills flared with irritation. "Human analogues do not apply. Earth's fauna evolved alongside pack social instincts. The Gralvuk evolved alone in shadowed plains. It is biologically indifferent to companionship. Or maybe," Kira said, "no one ever figured out what it actually wants." Later that cycle, Kira reviewed the archives on the Gralvuk. Every attempt to study it followed the same protocol. Isolate, observe, document. Feed it from a chute. Keep energy fields high. Never enter the enclosure. Never interact. Behavior was labeled aggressive, untrainable, non-communicative. But there were anomalies. One log, weeks old, noted how Specimen 9 had returned a drone arm after it malfunctioned inside the habitat. Not destroyed. Not ignored. Returned, clumsily placed near the hatch. Kira zoomed in on the footage. The Gralvuk had carried it like a cat bringing home a kill. She leaned back, chewing her lip. "You're not just a brute, are you?" Day 1 of Kira's unofficial study began with subversion. She bribed a logistics droid for extra access to the observation deck. She turned off her comms. She wore no armor, just a standard research jacket and her usual boots. And in her jacket pocket, one pouch of blue cap berries from Earth. Rationed and dried, but still sweet and aromatic. She waited until the maintenance cycle cleared. Then she stepped to the edge of the Gralvuk enclosure, only a meter from the outer barrier, and knelt. The predator was at the far side, sleeping in the shade. She waited. 10 minutes. 20. And then it moved. Like a boulder unfolding, it rose and stretched, back arching, muscles rippling beneath armor-like hide. Its eyes opened. It sniffed the air once. Twice. And turned. Kira held her breath as it stalked toward her, slow and low. She didn't move. Didn't flinch. The Gralvuk stopped 2 meters away, one paw resting on the reinforced panel between them. Its copper eyes flicked to hers. Kira reached into her jacket and slowly pulled out a single berry. She placed it into the feeding chute. The Gralvuk sniffed, snorted, licked it once, then devoured it. Silence. It looked back at her. Kira smiled. "Want another?" By day 3, the alien instructors were concerned. "You've returned 4 times, said Vekthal. "For what purpose?" Kira shrugged. "Just observing. differently. You are feeding it. That is not research. That is conditioning. You don't think conditioning is a form of research? She asked. The Varnari made a choking noise that might have been a sigh. You risk misleading yourself. This species does not bond. It cannot. Kira didn't argue. She just returned to the habitat with a new pouch of berries and an old earth trick. She sat down with her back to the enclosure. No eye contact. No challenge. Just quiet. And eventually, a soft huff of breath behind her. The Gralvik approached and lay down, mirroring her posture on the other side of the wall. She grinned. By the end of the first week, the creature was waiting for her. Every time she entered the observation deck, it rose. Not aggressively, not anxiously, just curious, expectant. She began calling it Rumble, for the low vibrations it made when satisfied. It began mimicking her head tilts, her hand raises, her posture. You're not dumb, are you? She whispered once. You're just bored out of your mind. Then came the confrontation. Dr. Mason, you are suspended from all interaction with Specimen 9. Vekthal's voice was cold. Final. Kira raised an eyebrow. On whose authority? The Concord Zoological Council, he said. This experiment, if one could even call it that, is interfering with our scheduled aggression studies. Kira blinked. Aggression studies. We will be stimulating its hunting response to evaluate threat escalation patterns. You mean poking it with a stick until it loses its mind? Vekthal's frills curled inward, defensive. Standardized probes. Proven methodology. That creature has been showing signs of communication. You're going to torture it instead. It is a predator. Pain teaches it boundaries. And what about trust? Kira said, voice rising. What if we're the first species it hasn't attacked? What if we're about to make contact with something more than instinct? The Varnari glared at her. There is no contact with a creature that would disembowel you if not for the barrier. But Kira knew better. Rumble could have lunged during her first visit. Could have attacked the drones. He hadn't. He'd chosen not to. That night Kira snuck back in. She knew it was a breach. She knew the security systems would log her entry. But she had to warn Rumble. She approached the enclosure quietly, holding a scanner and a few berries. He was already there, waiting. Kira placed a hand on the barrier. Hey, big guy. Bad news. They're going to mess with your head. Try to make you mad. I'm sorry. Rumble pressed his forehead against the transparent panel, and carefully extended a claw. Kira hesitated, then mimicked the gesture. Their hands touched through the wall. For a moment they were just two creatures in a galaxy full of noise. Chapter 1 Wrap-Up. Key Character Developments. Kira Mason, a young but bold human xenopsychologist, challenges centuries of protocol with a mix of empathy, logic, and subtle rebellion. Rumble, Specimen 9. Begins as a feared predator but quickly demonstrates restraint, curiosity, and signs of mimicry. Instructor Vekthal serves as the representative of rigid alien scientific doctrine, cold, dismissive, and prideful. Major conflicts or turning points. Kira's unorthodox approach to interacting with the Gralvik immediately causes tension with the alien academic institution. Her growing bond with Rumble challenges the prevailing belief that the creature is untrainable and non-sentient. She is suspended just as she begins to make genuine progress, creating a sense of urgency and rebellion. Emotional/thematic beats. Awe at the creature's slow thawing toward Kira. Humor in her deadpan Earth logic versus the Varnari's melodramatic caution. Tension as institutional power threatens to undo her progress. Hope in the moment of contact between Kira and Rumble. HFY elements. Human emotional intelligence and subtle defiance as a tactical advantage. Kira's approach stands in stark contrast to the sterile, authoritarian methods of the aliens. The story hints that humanity's unique social instincts and resilience might succeed where entire civilizations have failed. The next solar cycle brought silence. No alerts, no logs, no instructor reprimands, not even a memo. Kira found this more unsettling than outright punishment. Something was wrong. She sat at the edge of the observation deck, staring down into Rumble's enclosure. But Rumble wasn't there. The habitat was dim. No heat signatures. No movement. She tapped into the restricted logs. Access denied. Another attempt. Clearance revoked. Human exchange researcher level 4. Kira's fingers clenched around the console. They moved him, she whispered. Her suspicions were confirmed by a second-year Denebian student she'd bribed with caffeine tablets and ancient Earth memes. They transferred the Gralvik to Section 7B, the student whispered, eyes darting. Combat response training. They're testing aggression provocation under kinetic stimuli. Instructor Vekthal's doing? Kira asked. No. Higher than him. Security Command has jurisdiction now. Kira felt her gut sink. Combat response training was where the Concord prepped for warfare against dangerous fauna. Tests there weren't observational, they were stress induction routines. Pain, containment, stress, threat displays. In other words, they were torturing him. Kira stormed into Vekthal's office. The Varnari barely looked up from his holoscreen. You've ignored your suspension. You're dissecting a sapient predator without any ethical oversight. He raised a brow. Sapient. A wild assumption, even for a human. He mimicked me. Returned tools. Responded to my voice. You think that's just instinct? You fed it, Vekthal said coolly. Of course it responded. Pavlovian behavior. Not intelligence. Kira threw a data chip onto the desk. Analyze that footage. Look at the timing. He only started mimicking after exposure to sustained vocal contact. That's not random, it's pattern recognition. Vekthal said nothing. She leaned in, voice low and dangerous. You're torturing a being that's trying to understand us. And I'm not going to let you destroy that. Plan A. Official protest. Filed. Ignored. Buried. Plan B. Internal appeal. Blocked by species ranking protocol. Humans were still level 3 affiliate members. No voting power. Plan C. Break in. Kira activated the stealth mod on her EVA suit, designed for low-radiation asteroid belts, and rewired her biometric signature into the janitorial bot registry. Section 7B was heavily shielded and required a dual-species passcode. So she hitched a ride in a supply crate bound for the targeting range. What she saw made her blood boil. Rumble, restrained with gravitational clamps and neural netting, lay in a pit-like arena. Around him, Concord drones circled, firing low-intensity pulse beams at intervals. The idea was to provoke reaction without permanent injury. But Kira saw it immediately. He wasn't reacting with rage. He was flinching, retreating. The great predator, the nightmare of 10 star systems, was afraid. He's not lashing out, a technician muttered. Why isn't it attacking? Raise output to 70%, ordered a cold voice from the command deck. Kira craned her neck and spotted Commander Drex, Concord Tactical Affairs. A Telvan with scales like obsidian and a jaw like a scythe. Stimulus response must escalate, Drex barked. If it does not trigger a defensive reflex, it is of no value to the war simulations. Kira couldn't take it anymore. She activated her suit's mic override. Stop the test. The drones froze. Drex's head snapped toward the observation window. What in the void? Kira stepped into full view. That creature is trying to trust us, and you're frying it like a malfunctioning droid. This isn't research, it's state-sanctioned sadism. Security scrambled toward her position. Drex raised a clawed hand. Wait. He stared down into the pit. The Gralvik's head had lifted. Despite the restraints, despite the pain. His eyes locked onto Kira. She moved closer to the glass. Rumble, she whispered. Hey, it's me. You're okay. I'm here. Rumble growled, a soft rumble, just like his namesake, and curled his tail toward himself in a defensive posture. Not aggressive. Not wild. Just scared. The entire room fell into stunned silence. Later, in the debrief chamber, Kira sat across from a panel of senior Concord officers. Drex paced slowly behind them, hands behind his back. "You trespassed into a restricted combat zone," one officer intoned. "Violated Ethical Code 96 Alpha. Interfered with a Tier 1 containment protocol." "I did," Kira said. "And I'd do it again." "Why?" "Because he trusted me. And he didn't attack. Not when he was shocked, not when you restrained him, not even when you hurt him. That's not the behavior of a beast. That's restraint. That's control. That's intelligence." "Speculative at best," one Varnari officer scoffed. "Then let me prove it," Kira said. They gave her 3 days. One test. One chance. She'd be allowed to enter the Gralvik's enclosure, without armor, weapons, or shielding, and demonstrate peaceful, cooperative interaction. If Rumble attacked, she would die. If she succeeded, the Council would be forced to re-evaluate the creature's status. No backups. No interventions. Kira's stomach turned as the terms were read aloud. But her voice was steady when she agreed. Day of the trial. The arena was emptied. Drones cleared. Emergency overrides locked. Rumble stood in the center, unrestrained this time, but enclosed by 6-meter shock barriers on all sides. Cameras hovered overhead, broadcasting the scene to over 60 systems. Kira walked through the airlock in silence. The door shut behind her. It was just her and him. She didn't run. Didn't cower. Just walked, slowly, carefully, until she was within 2 meters of the great predator. Rumble lowered his head, nostrils flaring. Kira took out her final pouch of bluecap berries. She held it out. "These are for you." The creature stepped forward, slow, deliberate, then stopped. He sniffed once. Then, with a rumble that echoed like distant thunder, he leaned forward and gently nuzzled her palm. The gasps from the broadcast team were audible. Somewhere, a Telvan admiral choked on his tea. Kira smiled, tears stinging her eyes. "Good boy." Later, in the aftermath of the trial, Instructor Vekthal stood outside her quarters. His frills were tight. "You risked everything." Kira nodded. "So did he." There was a pause. "You named it Rumble." He grinned. "He named himself. I just listened." Chapter 2 Wrap-Up. Main events. Rumble is transferred to a combat testing facility. Kira discovers the experiments involve deliberate provocation and pain. She illegally enters the facility and witnesses Rumble's restraint firsthand. A tribunal gives her one final chance: prove a bond or accept the creature as irredeemable. Kira enters the enclosure without protection, and succeeds. Key character developments. Kira evolves from rebellious academic to full-blown advocate, risking her life for what she believes. Rumble demonstrates self-control and emotional connection under immense pressure. Commander Drex and the Concord begin to question their assumptions. Cracks form in their authority. Major conflicts or turning points. The ethical clash between institutional science/military and individual moral responsibility. Kira's direct confrontation with high-level alien command marks a major escalation. The public nature of her success begins to shift political tides. Emotional or thematic beats. Tension. Kira's infiltration and the brutal scene of the testing chamber. Emotional or thematic beats. Tension. Kira's infiltration and the brutal scene of the testing chamber. Empathy versus authority. The human instinct to connect versus alien systems of control. Triumph. Kira's bond with Rumble validated in front of the entire Concord. HFY elements. Humanity's emotional intuition and moral courage win where cold alien logic fails. Kira's risk-taking nature and refusal to follow unjust rules allow her to succeed. Strategic defiance and raw emotional depth append centuries of alien doctrine. Kira blinked at the endless stream of notifications flooding her wrist display. She had expected a reprimand, maybe academic expulsion, even house arrest. She hadn't expected fame. The footage of her standing before Rumble, offering berries to a creature classified as a Class 9 apex biohazard, had gone viral on the galactic net. Not just viral, historic. Half the Concord was calling it a miracle. The other half was calling it treason. Council Day. The Grand Hall of Sentient Affairs was more crowded than ever. Representatives from over 95 species hovered, slithered, walked, or glided into place. Security drones patrolled the chamber with far more vigilance than usual. Kira stood in the center, Rumble seated calmly behind her. The Gralvak's posture was relaxed, massive body coiled protectively, glowing amber eyes scanning the chamber with quiet wariness. He wore a neural language assist band, translating emotional resonance to basic speech tones. On a raised dais, Chancellor Elthuvan, an elder Zalari with translucent membranes and 10 stalked eyes, presided. This hearing, the Chancellor intoned, concerns the reclassification request of the Gralvak predator specimen, currently known as Rumble, from non-sapient threat class to protected sentient. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the chamber. A Surran delegate snorted. Absurd. It's a beast. Kira stepped forward. Then let the beast speak. All eyes turned to Rumble. He sat silently, then let out a deep growl, the band on his neck glowing faintly as it auto-translated. I listen. Learn. She fed. I felt, not hunger. He turned his massive head toward Kira. She stayed. When pain came, she stayed. Gasps echoed around the room. A Gathari counselor hissed. Primitive mimicry. No comprehension. Kira shook her head. Then explain the tool returns. The mimicry with intention. The refusal to attack even under stress. Or this. She activated a holo-recording. It showed Rumble inside the testing arena, sketching in the sand. He had drawn 3 shapes. A triangle, a square, and a spiral. Then, with one claw, he pointed to the square and made a low whine. He started developing symbolic association, Kira said. Square for pain. Triangle for food. Spiral for me. Correlation does not equal cognition, a Telvan delegate snapped. But others remained quiet. Butching. Calculating. Doubting. After the hearing, Kira was approached by an unexpected figure. High Inquisitor Zashthar, a massive infernid species known for their cold efficiency and ruthless classification policies. You are either a fool, he said, voice like crackling coal, or a very dangerous idealist. Why not both? Kira replied. He studied Rumble. If that thing turns feral and kills a diplomat, it won't be him on trial. It'll be your entire species. Are you prepared to bear that weight? Kira hesitated only for a second. Yes. That night, in her temporary quarters on the diplomatic deck, Kira stared out into the stars. Rumble sat beside her, silently eating freeze-dried fruit and occasionally watching the light trails of ships in the void. She whispered, "They don't believe you can understand us." Rumble huffed softly. "I try." Kira smiled and rested her head against his thick shoulder. "I know, but not everyone appreciated the progress." Concord security logs flagged several encrypted messages. Surveillance AI picked up movement in the restricted levels near the Arboretum habitat. Then the break-in happened. A cloaked infiltration team breached the outer wing of the Grand Hall's lifeform habitat, Rumble's current enclosure. Laser cutters sliced through the shielding gate. The attackers were quick, quiet, coordinated. They weren't just here to sabotage. They were here to kill. But Rumble was faster. His natural senses picked up the intruders before the door was even fully breached. When the first tranquilizer dart was fired, Rumble rolled sideways, smashing into the intruders like a landslide with fangs. By the time Kira arrived, dragged by alarms and half-suited in an emergency EVA rig, Rumble had pinned 2 attackers to the floor. He hadn't killed them, but his claws hovered less than a breath away. She ran to him, heart thudding. "Rumble! Stop!" He turned toward her, eyes burning, breath shallow. She walked slowly. No weapons, no tech, Used her. She held up her hand. He let out a low, rumbling whine and stepped back. Security arrived seconds later. The attackers, mercenaries with no formal ties to any Concord nation, were taken into custody. The council was in uproar. This time, though, they weren't angry at Kira. They were furious someone had tried to assassinate the galaxy's first domesticated apex predator. The day after, a closed-door emergency session convened. High Inquisitor Zashthar, Chancellor Elthuvan, Commander Drex, and a handful of neutral observers attended. Kira presented a formal treaty proposal. The Sentient Apex Integration Act, to designate Rumble as a protected sentient species ambassador in training, under human mentorship. Most expected it to be rejected outright. But after the failed assassination and mounting public support for the beast who spared his kill, even the most skeptical delegates hesitated. Zashthar, who had once warned Kira of dangerous idealism, cast the deciding vote. "Let us see," he said, "if the predator can walk among prey without teeth." Chapter 3 Wrap-Up. Main events. Kira and Rumble attend a Concord Council session to argue for Rumble's sentience. Rumble demonstrates rudimentary language comprehension and symbolic reasoning. A failed assassination attempt on Rumble threatens the fragile diplomacy. Rumble's decision to spare the attackers shocks the galaxy. The council votes narrowly in favor of Rumble becoming a protected ambassador. Key character developments. Kira evolves into a true diplomat and political actor, using science, compassion, and strategy. Rumble shows emotional control, symbolic logic, and the capacity for mercy. Zashthar shifts from antagonist to uneasy ally, seeing the pragmatic value in Kira's gamble. The Concord begins to fracture under internal philosophical pressures. Major conflicts or turning points. The assassination attempt represents the moment where real violence could undo everything. Rumble's choice not to kill is a galaxy-wide shockwave, appending expectations about apex predator behavior. The vote for sentient status is a razor's-edge political turning point. Emotional or thematic beats. Trust versus fear. Rumble's peaceful behavior in the council and under threat contrasts with the paranoia around him. Mercy as strength. HFY flips expectations. Humans bet on emotional connection and it pays off. Unlikely alliances. Even former skeptics begin to shift, not from emotion, but from observation and strategy. HFY elements. Human emotional intelligence triumphs over alien bureaucratic rigidity. Kira's courage and moral consistency influence interstellar policy. Rumble, through Kira's guidance, redefines what it means to be civilized, proving humanity's power lies in empathy and unpredictable thinking. The Concord Deep Archives had only 2 known records of true apex-class species. One was a sentient fungus that melted its prey from the inside out, now extinct. The other was the Gralvik, untamable, emotionless, and considered an evolutionary dead end. Until Rumble. Now, with the new Sentient Apex Integration Act in effect, Rumble was no longer a specimen or a threat. He was a representative. And the galaxy wasn't ready for it. The integration process began on Nala Station, a neutral hub surrounded by security satellites and press drones. Kira stood beside Rumble as the diplomatic trials commenced. Series of first contact rehearsals between Rumble and representatives from various Concord species. The Telvan sent a diplomat encased in a plasma-sealed exosuit, speaking only through high-frequency audio bursts. Rumble listened, then bowed, clumsy but sincere. The insectoid Vexii tried a pheromone test. Rumble mimicked Kira's calming breathing and exhaled near their antennae, eliciting an unexpected purring click from the ambassador. Even the cold-blooded Suran were impressed when Rumble offered a ceremonial shell fragment, actually a broken chair leg he'd kept from the lab. "I told you he's learning," Kira whispered to Commander Drex, who had been watching silently from the observation deck. Drex shook his head, grinning. "That's not learning. That's strategy." Kira turned, surprised. "You approve now." Drex chuckled. "I don't trust it. But I'm a soldier. I trust results." Meanwhile, shadow networks buzzed. Not all were happy about a predator in the halls of diplomacy. A group calling themselves Purity of Form, composed of fringe members from several Concord races, began issuing threats. The predator walks among prey. Soon it will feast. When the Telvan diplomat was poisoned, suspicion exploded. Security bots tracked the toxin to an illegal synthesis compound, one used only in military-grade infiltration, species neutral, targeting neural receptors. That meant someone was escalating. It also meant the attacks weren't just against Rumble. They were against the idea of integration itself. To root out the conspirators, Concord intelligence needed a plan, one no one would see coming. So they asked the unpredictable species. Humanity. Kira led the bait op herself. Rumble would appear at the Unity Gala, a diplomatic ceremony hosted on a neutral moon base, without escort. The event would be flooded with high-ranking targets. Perfect bait for extremists who wanted a massacre. They'll think we're arrogant, Kira said in the briefing. They'll think we believe the predator is civilized now. Zashthar's gravel voice rasped through the war table display. And what if they're right? What if he turns? Kira looked the Inquisitor dead in the eyes. Then I'm the one who dies first. The gala sparkled with crystalline light and soft music from at least 9 species. Diplomats swirled in circular dances, tentacle greetings and cautious nods. Rumble stood silent in the center of it all. Massive. Imposing. Wearing a formal sash of the human diplomatic corps across his broad chest. He held a bowl of berries in one claw. Ceremonial, of course, but meaningful. Everyone remembered. Kira moved among the crowd, calm but alert. Her calm buzzed once, then twice. Third air vent, whispered Drex. Movement. At the same time, Zashthar muttered from a dark corner. Energy fluctuation. They're using shielded phase tech. Then it happened. The lights cut. A sonic shriek erupted. And 10 armed infiltrators burst from hidden panels, their weapons aimed straight for Rumble. He didn't move. Not at first. Then, as the attackers opened fire, Rumble's body blurred into motion, a spinning wall of muscle and instinct. But here was the difference. He didn't kill. He moved to protect. Shielding nearby diplomats, smashing weapons, pinning attackers without lethal force. When one tried to stab him with a vibroblade, Rumble caught the blade with his teeth, then dropped it harmlessly to the floor. Kira dived into cover, heart pounding. Drex's forces stormed the chamber, arresting the infiltrators in under 60 seconds. When the lights came back on, Rumble stood in the center again, chest heaving, covered in cuts, still holding the bowl of berries. The footage spread across the galaxy. A predator trained not to fight, but to protect. A beast that had been given trust, and returned it tenfold. Public opinion shifted overnight. Where once there had been fear, now there was awe. And for many, something worse, respect. 3 weeks later, the Concord passed a new motion. The Gralvik species would be reclassified as potentially upliftable. Rumble would remain the sole ambassador, for now. But humanity was granted a permanent liaison role to monitor and guide further uplift efforts. The implications were galactic. It meant there was no such thing as a species too far gone. No such thing as incurable nature. Only patience and trust. On a quiet outpost orbiting a red dwarf star, Kira sat with Rumble outside a research dome. She threw a berry at him. He caught it midair. You know, she said. You just rewrote centuries of xenobiology, military protocol, and evolutionary ethics. Rumble rumbled, amused. Berry. Good trade. They both laughed. Chapter 4 Wrap-Up. Main events. Rumble participates in official first contact rehearsals, impressing various species. A fringe extremist group poisons a diplomat, escalating tensions. A human-devised plan uses the Unity Gala as bait to lure out the terrorists. Rumble protects rather than attacks, solidifying his sentience and value. The Concord passes a resolution recognizing potential for uplift among apex species. Key character developments. Kira becomes not just a researcher, but a strategist and galactic influencer. Rumble evolves into a guardian figure, disciplining instinct for something higher. Drex and Zashthar both come to respect the unpredictable success of human emotional intelligence and strategy. Major conflicts or turning points. The Unity Gala attack serves as the climax. High-stakes action tied to trust and restraint. Rumble's choice to defend, not kill, proves he's more than instinct. The reclassification of the Gralvik reshapes galactic law and philosophy. Emotional or thematic beats. Redemption and reformation. Even those born to kill can choose peace. Trust as a weapon. Kira's belief in empathy turns the tide of political history. Humanity as catalyst. Not through dominance, but through connection. Chifwai highlights. Human tactical creativity traps terrorists while protecting diplomats. Emotional bonds triumph where centuries of alien logic failed. Rumble's transformation proves humanity's unique power isn't strength, it's belief in change. Final line of the story. When they asked Kira how she did it, how she tamed the untamable, she just smiled and held up a single berry.